The arrogant brought to his knees, the young waitress who stunned an entire restaurant with music. Aurora Restaurant, one of the most luxurious establishments in the heart of the city, shimmered under the warm glow of golden lights. Elegant laughter blended with the soft jazz melodies floating from the corner of the room, creating an atmosphere of pure opulence and sophistication. Amidst the expensive suits and swirling glasses of wine, Maya, a young waitress, moved quietly between the tables, swiftly refilling water and clearing plates. To most patrons, she was nothing more than part of the lavish backdrop, a shadow among the proud and the privileged. Yet, beneath her calm exterior lay a soul filled with longing, an artist buried by time, a talent shackled by fate. Tonight, Maya's destiny was about to change. As the restaurant doors swung open, an air of arrogance swept in with the arrival of Ethan Caldwell. A wealthy and powerful businessman, he was known not only for his success but also for his habit of toying with others to inflate his own ego. When his gaze landed on Maya, a smirk of amusement curled on his lips. Tonight, he had found his entertainment. But what he didn't know was that he would be the one left speechless. A meeting with the arrogant businessman. The doors of Aurora Restaurant swung open, letting in a gust of cold air, but it was nothing compared to the icy arrogance of the man who stepped inside, Ethan Caldwell. He was not just a successful businessman, he was a man who flaunted his power by belittling others. Wherever he went, all eyes inevitably turned toward him, not out of admiration, but because people knew he took pleasure in making a spectacle out of those around him. Maya was clearing a table when he arrived. She recognized him instantly, not because he was famous, but because of the way he walked, so confident it bordered on arrogance. As if he owned the entire room. He wasn't alone. The people accompanying him were just as impeccably dressed, their laughter brimming with the kind of self-assurance that came from indulging in a life of excess. Maya kept her head down, focused on her work, hoping to avoid unnecessary attention. But fate had other plans. When she approached Ethan's table to take his order, he leaned back in his chair, his gaze flickering toward her name tag. Maya, that's a beautiful name, he mused, dragging out the syllables as if savoring each one. I bet you have more talents than just waiting tables. Don't you? Maya hesitated for a fraction of a second. She had worked this job long enough to tell the difference between polite small talk and a calculated provocation. Keeping her composure, she simply nodded and offered a professional smile. I just do my best at my job. Sir, would you like to place an order? But Ethan wasn't ready to move on. He narrowed his eyes, as if trying to see past the surface. What do you do when you're not serving tables? He asked. His tone casual yet laced with a quiet challenge. Maya hesitated again but answered honestly. I play the piano sometimes. It was a simple statement. But Ethan burst into laughter. His entire table joined in, though none of them seemed to understand what was so amusing. A hidden artist, tucked away in this uniform? How intriguing. He rested his chin on his hand, a mischievous gleam in his eyes. Would you care to show us? There's a piano right over there. A heavy silence settled over the room. Nearby diners had begun to take notice. Maya felt a tightness in her chest. This wasn't a genuine invitation, it was a trap. He had no interest in hearing her play. He just wanted a free performance. A fleeting moment of amusement at her expense. She shook her head politely. Thank you, but I have work to do. But Ethan wasn't ready to let her go that easily. He leaned forward, his smirk deepening. Oh, so you only talk about it but don't dare to prove it? I thought a real artist would never miss a chance to shine. Scattered laughter echoed from his table. A few other guests whispered among themselves, waiting to see how this would unfold. Maya's fingers curled into fists. A war raged within her. She could simply walk away, ignore his taunts, and continue with her shift as if nothing had happened. But if she did, she would be giving him exactly what he wanted, her surrender. Then, as if from a distant memory, she heard her mother's voice in her mind. Never let anyone make you feel small. You are stronger than they think. Maya took a deep breath. When she lifted her head, there was no hesitation in her eyes. She met Ethan's gaze head on and spoke with quiet determination. All right, I'll play. A hush fell over the restaurant. She stepped toward the piano, each footfall feeling like walking a tightrope between triumph and disaster. But one thing was certain, this moment was no longer just about her. This was her chance to prove that talent was not measured by wealth or status. And she wasn't going to let anyone take that away from her. The challenge and the defining moment. The air inside Aurora Restaurant seemed to hold its breath as Maya walked toward the grand piano. Each step echoed in the silence, as if the entire room was bracing for something extraordinary. Behind her, Ethan Caldwell reclined in his chair, amusement flickering in his eyes. Laced with challenge, he was certain that this young waitress would falter, make a fool of herself, and by the end of the night, he would have a new story to tell, one that painted him as the victor. Maya settled in front of the piano. The polished surface reflected her face, but she didn't look at it. Instead, she closed her eyes and took a deep breath. For years, she had let music lie dormant, locking it away in a quiet corner of her heart. But tonight, she would no longer keep it hidden. Her fingers rested gently on the keys. Cold, but in a single second, the hesitation vanished. She pressed down on the first note. A crisp, clear sound rang through the heavy atmosphere, pulling every gaze toward her. At first, the melody was soft, a whisper against the tension in the air. But then, note by note, it grew. The music swelled, rising in waves, filling every corner of the room with a force that was undeniable. Maya no longer saw the faces around her. There was only the music. She had not chosen this piece because it was simple, but because it told her story, a story full of emotion. Tender yet aching, laced with quiet determination. This was more than just a performance, it was a lifetime laid bare through each keystroke. The dreams she had set aside, the countless nights spent at an old piano, the hope she once thought had faded, all of it surged back to life in this moment. The restaurant was silent, completely, utterly silent. The people who had laughed moments ago, the diners lost in their own conversations, now sat motionless, drawn in by something they had not expected. Even the other waitstaff had paused, eyes wide in astonishment. Ethan, the man who had believed himself in control of this game, had lost his smirk. He sat upright now, his wineglass frozen midair. He couldn't believe what he was witnessing. But Maya didn't need to look at him. She didn't need his approval. Or anyone's. She had herself. She had her music. And tonight, she had reclaimed what she thought she had lost. The piece reached its climax, each note resonating with the passion and longing of a girl who once believed she had to give up. Then, like a door swinging open, like a dream reaching its peak, the final notes drifted into the air. The last note lingered, stretching out as if refusing to let go of the moment. Then, silence. A stillness settled over the restaurant. Maya remained seated, fingers resting lightly on the keys. She didn't turn around. She didn't need to. She could feel it, the shift in the air. The silence was no longer expectant mockery. It was reverence. And then, a single clap broke the stillness. Then another. And then, the entire room erupted in applause. Some stood, clapping relentlessly. A few even whistled in admiration. Her colleagues watched from the sidelines, their eyes shining with pride. Maya exhaled. Slowly, she rose to her feet and turned to face the room. Ethan was still sitting, but he was no longer smiling. The mockery had vanished from his face. What remained was something he hadn't expected to feel: discomfort, even shame. An unexpected shift. The arrogant brought to his knees. The applause had yet to fade. Some guests had risen to their feet, their expressions no longer filled with idle curiosity but with genuine admiration. An older woman placed a hand over her heart, as if she had just witnessed something deeply moving. A young man let out an appreciative whistle. Maya's colleagues, the ones who had secretly listened to her play during breaks, now looked at her with unmasked pride. Maya gave a small bow in silent gratitude. There was nothing left to say. Everything that needed to be proven had already been laid bare in the music. Then, her gaze shifted to Ethan Caldwell's table. He was still seated, the wineglass in his hand long forgotten. His fingers tightened around the stem, but his eyes were vacant, as if unable to process what had just unfolded. Maya could see it clearly, the moment his self-assurance crumbled. He had expected a clumsy attempt, a moment of humiliation to laugh at. Instead, he was left with nothing but his own stunned silence. No one was laughing with him anymore. The people at his table avoided her gaze, their heads slightly lowered, as if they didn't want to be associated with his failure tonight. It took a long moment before he finally set his glass down and clapped, slow, hesitant, lacking the confidence and authority he once carried. I have to admit, that was unexpected. His voice finally broke the silence. He let out a small chuckle. But it no longer held the condescension it once did. I didn't think a waitress could play like that. Maya didn't respond immediately. Instead, she took a step closer to him. Her posture composed, her every movement deliberate, and when she finally spoke, her voice was calm, but her words cut sharper than any insult could. Everyone has talent. The question is how they choose to use it. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't needed to, yet every syllable struck with precision, piercing through the last remnants of Ethan's pride. A strange silence settled over his table. His companions exchanged uneasy glances, as if silently questioning whether they should continue standing by him. A few discreetly gestured for the check, eager to leave before the weight of the night's events settled in. Ethan was a man used to controlling every conversation, every situation, but tonight, he had lost, not because he had been humiliated. Maya had never stooped to his level. She hadn't needed to tear him down to rise above him. She had simply done what she did best, and that alone had been enough to defeat him. Maya turned away without a farewell, without a second glance. She hadn't played to shame him. She had played for herself, and in doing so, she had reclaimed what was hers, her pride, her dream, and the respect of those around her. And Ethan Caldwell, the man who once believed himself the master of every game, sat in silence, grappling with a truth he had never considered. Money could not buy respect, and arrogance held no power in a world where true talent spoke for itself. A turning point, the opportunity Maya never expected. Maya walked away, the echoes of applause still lingering in the air. But this time, each step felt lighter. She was no longer just a quiet waitress, bowing her head before the wealthy patrons of Aurora. She had reminded everyone of a simple truth: talent knows no class, and dreams cannot be so easily buried. Ethan and his entourage slipped out of the restaurant in silence. Gone were the mocking laughter and arrogant jests. He was used to controlling every situation. But tonight, Maya had been the one in command. She hadn't needed to retaliate or tear him down. She had won with the one thing that mattered most: her music. One by one, diners approached her, not to order food or ask for the check, but to express their admiration. An elderly woman gently placed a hand on her shoulder, her voice trembling with emotion. "You reminded me of my younger days. Never stop playing. Dear, you have a rare gift." A middle-aged man, likely a businessman, leaned in and spoke in a low voice. "I've invested in many talents before, but I've rarely seen someone silence an entire room with just their music. If you're considering a career in music, I might be able to help." Maya could only smile in gratitude. She wasn't sure where these offers would lead. But one thing was clear: for the first time, she no longer felt like a forgotten dream. But the biggest surprise of the night came when a sharply dressed man, with salt and pepper hair and eyes both piercing and warm, stepped forward. "I'm David Collins, a music producer from Nashville. I was here tonight." His voice was steady, carrying a weight of sincerity. "I didn't come here looking for talent, but I believe I just found one." Maya's eyes widened, her heart pounding. David continued, "I can't promise to make you a star, but I have a studio. And if you're willing, I can help you record a demo." For a moment, Maya could hardly believe what she was hearing. A real opportunity, a door opening right in front of her. She stood in silence, steadying her breath. Then, she looked up at David and nodded. "I'm ready." And in that moment, she knew, this was where everything changed. That night, everything changed. As Maya stepped out of the restaurant that night, the crisp city air brushed against her face. Yet, despite the chill, a warmth spread through her chest, one she hadn't felt in years. For the first time in a long while, the road ahead no longer seemed uncertain. She was no longer just a waitress, quietly watching as dreams passed her by. She was an artist, a woman driven by passion. And tonight, she had reclaimed her voice. The opportunity David Collins had offered her didn't come with the promise of an easy path. But that no longer mattered. What mattered was that she had dared to rise, to seize the moment, and to prove that true talent needed no excuses, no validation from others to shine. And Ethan Caldwell? He might have wealth, power, and influence, but that night, he learned a lesson that money could never buy. No one has the right to belittle another's dreams. Maya had not just silenced him, she had forced him to confront a truth he had never considered, that a person's worth is not measured by their social standing or their bank account, but by what they bring to the world. Maya's story is a reminder to all of us. In life, there will always be people like Ethan, those who mock, who undermine others to feel superior. But the real question is, will you bow to them? If you have a dream, don't let anyone make you doubt its worth. Don't wait for validation to pursue what you love. Talent does not beg for recognition. When you dare to stand, when you let your passion speak for itself, the world will have no choice but to listen. And you? Will you step forward and turn your dream into reality?